Joe, we're right around the corner from one of your big locations, 1325 Comm Ave.
Right.
This is your old haunt.
Well, Boston is a small town. It's a world-class city, but it's a small town, so you're really not far from, you know, someplace. If you grew up here, you know, you're not far from someplace that has some history for you. If you grew up here, you know. I mean, I grew up in Hopedale, which is back then like about an hour or so ride, you know, on the like the blue highways we call them now, but you know, it was before 495 and 128. I remember stickers that used to say "Finish 128," you know, and it used to be like a 3 or 4 hour ride up to New Hampshire at the Lake Sunapee.
I know. So, how's a guy? I mean, you spent your summers at Lake Sunapee. How's a guy who could? That was impressive, by the way. You could hold your breath for 5 minutes underwater. You built that little bell raft. How does a guy who was such a nature buff, and your mom too, you know, fall in love with a guitar? How did that happen? You said you had a lust for guitars. How did it start?
You know, I think part of it was just it felt comfortable when I picked it up to play it. I started off, my first experience with a stringed instrument like that was the cavahina, I think it's called. It's basically a Portuguese guitar, which is it's small like a ukulele, and I think I pronounced it right. But I know I get a lot of grief from my relatives about, you know. But anyway, it's I remember being very young and playing it, you know, fooling with it, and just there was something very comfortable about it, even though it was like very tiny. But then I was tiny too, so. And then I finally convinced my parents to get me a guitar, and as hard as it was to play, it being an inexpensive student guitar, I just loved it because it was something that just felt comfortable and felt right, you know, even though I was told to play it backwards, essentially, you know, because I didn't really know of any artists that played the other way.
Yeah, left hand, right hand, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I just picked up the little 45 RPM CD disc and put it on the turntable, and it said put the neck in your left hand and the pick in the right hand, and then strum and tune the guitar. And then we'll go to the basic chords. So I was fortunate enough a few months ago to do a session with Paul McCartney in the studio. It was one of those things that just was in the right place at the right time, and we cut a song live in the studio, and we worked together for about 5 hours. And when it was over, I asked him, you know, like, how is it that he knew that he could play left-handed? And he said, well, Slim Whitman, and he named 3 or 4 artists that were famous at the time that played left-handed, and so he knew it was an option. You know, if you were left-handed.
By the way, did you tell him that Hard Day's Night changed your life?
No, I didn't get that far. I mean, we were kind of involved with what we were doing that day, but you know, it's almost like I had met him before, and I might have said something like that, but I think, you know, you get to a point where you realize that, you know, he's been told that so many times. It's kind of like, you know, chances are that I'm playing guitar, and at my age, there's no way he couldn't have. So anyway, but it was amazing experience. But anyway, the point is that he had an example to follow, and I didn't. You know, there wasn't much music in my house, and I found that the freedom of the woods and scuba diving and kind of inventing these gadgets to help further my cause, so to speak. I mean, I was pretty much a loner anyway, so it kind of fit the whole thing. So, but you know, every conversation I had about being a marine biologist ended with, well, when you get out of college, come and see us. And it was just one of those things. I mean, I was having such a hard time because I really wanted to please my parents. I wasn't like one of those like guys that was like, you know, a screw up in school. I mean, I did what I was supposed to do. Spent my time in study hall with a lot of the guys that were screw ups too, which kind of put that stigma on you. And it was a tough time in school. I did not have a good time there.
Well, they sent you to Vermont Academy. I mean, that was quite a story because they thought you were going to do better there, but well, the academics were the same, and you ended up getting thrown out of your hair.
I saw guys, you know, being able to go home on the weekends because they had good grades and they didn't have to go to study hall. I had to go to study hall, and it just didn't work. And the tutors taught me the best they could. I mean, people didn't recognize it as a disability or the way that, and ironically, over the years, Vermont Academy has become one of the better known schools for dealing with people with that kind of learning disability. And well, 20 years too late, you know, for me. But at least as far as my schoolwork went, maybe as far as rock and roll goes, it's a different story. But and the whole, you know, not cutting my hair was so symbolic of the rebellion I was feeling at the time as well, because I just didn't see myself being, you know, wearing a suit and tie and having that kind of a job. And
so you had already met Stephen Tallarico up in Sunapee. He was also one of the guys that hung out up there, but you reconnected down here. I mean, you guys, and you knew he was into music, you were into music, but it was really here, that Fenway gig, where everything came together. What happened there?
Well, actually, I'd seen his bands over a couple of summers come up to the lake, and it's a resort up there. And every summer, the gang would get together wherever they came from, mostly from Boston or New York, and that's actually where I met him on a musical level. And he was without a band at that point. He had just quit he had 5 or 6 bands that I knew of. And he had asked, he was looking for a gig, you know, trying to stay in the business. And the Jeff Beck group apparently was looking for a singer, and so a good friend of his knew another friend over in England who worked with Led Zeppelin, and Stephen wanted to send a tape over, and he said, he asked if I would, you know, my band would back him up so he could send a tape over, and we did a version of "I'm Down" by the Beatles, you know, and we sent that over, and we never heard back, but the point is we got a chance to play together, and he sat down on the drums, and we jammed for a couple of hours, and that's when I really realized, you know, how inventive a player he was, because I had seen him. His bands were cover bands, and you know, of course, it takes a certain amount of skill and talent to be that good. But you know, it's another thing to create songs and be able to write songs, and I could see that there was that potential there. You know, aside from the fact, you know, when we talked about things like, you know, about the woods and going out and water skiing and swimming in the lake, and how much we loved that. And I think that formed the basis of our so-called our brotherhood is the best way to put it. And early on, I knew that we had an affinity for each other, and as I said in the book, I think that having a brother for 5 days that never made it home from the hospital, made an indelible mark.
Really.
And I always felt like I was supposed to have a brother somehow in the way the cosmos works. So I thought there was always and you know, it's interesting that I didn't even remember that until the book was done.
Yeah,
and I
because
was
you had that
actually
right at the end.
writing the acknowledgments, and that story came to mind, and I wrote the acknowledgments all in one go, and that story came out, and I still think about it, you know.
So you talked about a kid, how you dreamed of being a rock star. I mean, most kids do, and as you pointed out in the book, like 1 in a million, 1 in 8 million chances. 1973, you and the band, I mean, you got this big hit, Dream On. It's like, could you believe it at that point? I mean, here you are. It's exactly what you wanted.
It was stunning, frankly. I mean, just the fact that the band was asked back to play places. I mean, and we were kind of following our own path. We weren't playing the clubs as a cover band. We were going out into the suburbs and playing high schools and kind of putting on our own rock shows. And we weren't playing original songs at that point. Maybe 1 or 2, but we were certainly putting our own stamp on the cover songs that we were doing, and the audience was entertained. You know, they saw something there that we were doing that was different than your average band at a high school dance, and we were able to support ourselves on these, you know, weekend gigs, and it gave us time to rehearse our stuff during the week, and so we never became part of the scene in Boston, so to speak.
I don't want to minimize this because it was such a big part of your life, but I mean, Stephen introduced you to Coke. You had a brief affair with Judy Carn, and she was doing Coke at the time. I mean, all kinds of drugs became part of your lifestyle, which led to some of the fighting. But even with the fighting, you said that you guys were motivated beyond reason, which kind of led to the interactions that you would have both on the stage and off.
Yeah, that's true.
Why were you motivated beyond reason?
You know, there was something about all of our personalities, whether there was, we were trying to prove something in some guys' cases. I mean, I know everybody in the band so well through all the things we've been through. I could, just the way they know me. I mean, they know my story really well. I mean, they know how I grew up, and just as I know the way they grew up, and kind of, there was just, what I think is there was a common thread that ran through all our personalities that made us feel like we had to prove something. And there was the thing about like seeing Hard Day's Night and identifying with like the outsider side of the Beatles. You know, they were I mean, rock and roll, you were kind of stepping outside of normal society, you know, and that kind of fit the pattern for the kind of rebellion that was going on at the time. There was, I mean, ever since, I mean, it was a really intense decade. I mean, starting with the assassinations and then the marches down south, and of course the war, which affected everybody, especially if you were 18 or 17 years old. I mean, we would see our friends getting drafted, and then we'd watch this horrible war on TV every day, and so that was a big part of the rebellion.
But at one point you said we were musicians fooling around with drugs,
right? And
we became druggies fooling around with music. I mean, that was a realization that things were spiraling out of control. You said 1979 was the worst year of your life. What happened?
Well, it was really strange, because from the outside you'd see this band on stage that looked like they were right on the edge, and we were playing to 60,000 people at the drop of a hat. I mean, we were selling out all over the place, and selling records, and but on the inside, we had a lot of trouble separating our personal lives from our business lives or the music. I mean, we were, growing older and starting to find our own ways. I mean, some guys wanted to party with the groupies. Some guys wanted to have girlfriends. Some guys didn't know what they wanted to do. They just were going along for the ride. But the bottom line is we were making music and entertaining fans in a way that we were feeling when we went to see rock and roll shows. And we would get goosebumps when we'd see the rock stars walk on stage, and we were fulfilling that dream, and that was the glue that held us together.
But you admit, you had no idea what was going on financially. It's almost like a cliche, the big sports stars making millions of dollars, and suddenly look around and it's all gone. How could you not know, or did you not care? You just didn't know.
We didn't really pay attention to what was going on, and do I think that they did, the managers did anything illegal? I don't think so. Did they do what they did? Was it immoral? Yeah, I think they should have taken better care of us, because we just did not have a clue. But we were out there pounding the boards, touring constantly, and but I have to take responsibility for not paying attention. And none of us had extravagant lifestyles. It's not like we were buying houses left and right. I mean, we all had bought like a house and a few cars, and I mean, we were constantly working. So it came as a shock, and of course the red light went off in my mind. I always was kind of like trying to get the guys to bring in a third party to kind of just watch what was going on, but we didn't. There was this. We don't want to upset the apple cart. Plus, we're having a lot of fun, and we just took all the infighting is part of the dynamic of the band. I mean, some of the conflict between Stephen and I, as far as the songs we wrote, we came from two different ends of the spectrum. I was like the anarchist, and he was the guy that wanted to practice and practice and practice. And somewhere in the middle, we were able to write this batch of songs that became the backbone of our career.
I get a kick out of you talking about how slow he was as a writer.
Well, it was always a puzzle to me, because he's so witty, and if you ever saw him on American Idol, he comes up with stuff like that, and I wish I had. And I would have had $1 for every time I said to him, "Stephen, write that down," and we'd be talking and joking in the car, and on some of the drives, going to here to there, and he'd be like rattling on, and he'd make up these limericks, and I'd say, "Write that down. That would make great lyrics," and he would, "No, I can't." And there is one thing, a technical thing that he does that separates him from other songwriters, is that, because he's a drummer and he's very rhythm oriented, he likes to use words as almost like a percussion instrument, so that the words kind of sound, just the sound of the words help move the rhythm along of the song. So that takes an extra layer of work to make the song not only tell the story, have the lyrics work, and in a way that tell the story and carry that part of the song, but also it adds another thing that helps move the song along, and that takes a lot more work. So I think that was the thing that really, and to this day, it's still something that he carries that he has to do to write lyrics, but. Sometimes you don't have to go that far, and I'm always telling him, lighten up a little bit, I mean, I think if there's one thing, I wish we could have spent more time in the studio, and in those days, because we still had that this is new and exciting recording, and because we when we first walked in the studio, we didn't have a clue. I mean, we were really neophytes when it came to that. I mean, the technology and all that was like so foreign. He had been in the studio before, but it was in the day when, like 2 or 3 years before, when they said, okay, play, okay, you're done. We'll send you a copy later on, you know, that kind of thing.
So you certainly had your ups and downs over the decades, and you broke away for 4.5 years. But when you came back together, you write in the book how, you know, it took a little while for you to get comfortable again. Did you feel that the time you spent away, because you were with some important musicians then yourself, made you stronger? Did it bring the band back together in a more positive way with better results?
I think that, well, at least speaking for myself, I think that it gave me time to get some perspective on what we had accomplished and what was in the way, and that's when I went through a divorce and realized that was you know, I wasn't happy in that marriage, and it wasn't working. Though I did have a son he's an amazing guy now. I mean, he's a lawyer. He graduated from Stanford and went on to Georgetown Law, and is married to a beautiful lady that he met at Stanford, who's also a lawyer, and they're down in New York with she's going on 3 years old now. You know, a granddaughter, and they're expecting a son, and so I mean that was definitely worth putting up with my ex-wife to have him be here.
And of course you married a beautiful woman, Billy, and you credit her with really salvaging your career.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of stuff happened, and you know, Stephen had that gig with American Idol, and he kind of sprung on you, and then he fell off the stage in South Dakota in 2009. But even after all of that, you guys had this kind of magnetism. You wanted to get back. Even at
the worst, when we're like, because the dynamics are different, you know, and our interactions with each other are very complicated, as you might imagine.
I can tell by the book. Yeah.
Even at the very worst, when it's time to go on stage, it's like there's that 5 or 10 minutes when we shed all that stuff, and we hear the music start, whatever we're playing at the beginning of the show, and we hear the audience roar, and the adrenaline starts to flow, and that's what we got together for, 5 kids in an apartment at 1325 Comm Ave, and dreamed about doing, and whatever it is, whatever, like in the personalities that were common to all of us, that kicks in, and we're like the same kids. And it almost sounds like it does sound like a cliche that it keeps you young, it keeps you, you know, or you know, we feel 18 again. Well, it's really true. It's almost a visceral kind of thing. You can almost feel and taste it when we're out there. And I hit the first chords of the song, or Joey starts the song, and it's like, all of a sudden it's timeless. You know, I mean, I could be 45, I could be 35, I could be what I am, 60, 63, 64. It doesn't matter. And I see the audience out there, I see myself out there, and I give it up. I leave everything out there on the stage. But does it matter what you've said about each other? I mean, things have been written down. You weren't the only one to call Steven Tyler cruel and evil. Tom Hamilton has said that too. Steve Tyler went on 60 Minutes and said you guys were riding his coattails. I mean, you guys have said tough stuff to each other. I mean, is it tough love, and then you file it away somewhere and give it a nod and say... I'll get him back for that one someday. You know, but not, you know, it's the kind of thing you just know. I know from all the time we've spent together, on stage and off stage, but you know, like in dealing with different things, that he's just that kind of person, and you know, he may believe that in 1 minute, and then the next minute he'll swear that he can't go on stage without the rest of the guys, and it's just how he is. He just, you know, and you know, when we do interviews, and that's, I mean, people, you know, can spend enough, if they, I mean, at that particular instance, the interviewer spent about 2 days with each of us and kind of figured out what buttons to push, you know, and she almost maneuvered him into, you know, getting him to unload, you know, and then they get to edit it, and it's like, I mean, I know how that works, but I also know that you know, it's, I mean, at a different point, and maybe 5 years earlier, he would never have said anything like that. It's just another phase in our ongoing learning process of how to deal with each other, you know. Just because he said that, or if I said something in the book that he's going to take exception to, it's not going to stop us from going out and touring again.
So that's my question. You guys going to dream on into the next couple of decades?
Well, I think if we can get through this next couple of months and apart and get some strength back, and I mean, we're pretty burned out. The last 4 years have been a lot of work between him doing Idol and me doing the book and doing the last record and touring all through there, you know, and at different times. We've been going pretty steady for the last 4 years, so we need a little time to rest, you know. And it's interesting because if we had been in the condition that we were in at the end of the 70s, I might leave the band. I mean, but we have clear heads, and we have a true perspective of where we are and who we are, and it's just time to take a break, you know, and kind of do some things that we want to do, and live life a little bit, and enjoy the fruits of all the work, you know. As much as we love to play live, we need some time to live life, and that's what we're gonna do. But we're already talking about the potential of a tour next year, and where it's going to be. So it's. I think we're probably in a better place than we've ever been as far as our interaction together. You know, I mean, I have yet to hear him his take on the book. The other guys have been, you know, have read it and in their way, you know, said, you know, good job and all. I haven't heard from Tom yet, but Tom is probably going to take his time the way he does with everything else, you know. But you know, and I know Steven's going to find something about it, but it won't be what I think it is. I can't. I've stopped a long time ago trying to second guess him, you know, and go, well, I know this is going to piss him off. Well, you know what? I would never presume to figure him out, you know. I've learned that.
All right, Joe Perry. Thanks.
Well, thank you.